It's yet another Damascus Encounter program and another season and moment when we want to share and look at what Jesus is doing in the lives of his children. Not too many people have the privilege of growing up in the family with their loved ones, or too many times we find that we grew up with our loved ones, our parents, father and mother. But once in a while, you run into instances where you see somebody with a unique experience. I have with me in the studio today someone who has quite a number of experiences, and he is willing to share what Jesus has done when he encountered him. Welcome with me to the studio on the program today, Amaechi Amaraizu. Amaechi, you're welcome to the Damascus Encounter.
Thank you, sir.
Let's talk about your growing up. You grew up with some sense of resentment and ill feeling toward your father. Why is that?
Yes, my father abandoned me. I felt abandoned by my biological parents. Okay. I grew up, I was born and christened in Adventist home. Okay. I grew up among cousins. And also, I was raised by my grandparents. At this point, I never knew who my biological parents were. So I grew up with my cousins about 8 years or 9 years. That was when I came to the consciousness of who my biological mother was. So, and she always come and go. So I didn't have that time for that emotional bonding, that relationship
between mother
and child wasn't there. So it was
before you continue, pardon me if you will. So she was coming and going. Where exactly was she, and why were you left with your grandparents? Did you ever know?
She remarried because the relationship he had with my father never worked.
It didn't work out.
So they abandoned me with my grandparents.
Oh, okay.
So towards my adulthood, I was faced with a crisis of identity and self-worth. I also had this issue of meaning and purpose of life. That as a young adult, I was so much in confusion. Even when I got to university, I was not able to concentrate much because of the problems I was having, identity and
you didn't know who you were, where you belong.
Yes, that's a purpose for my life. I studied economics in Lagos State University, so I couldn't complete the program. Upon that, when I left the program, I pursued a career.
Okay. Before we get to that, you had issues with your identity.
Yes.
You were confused as to what exactly to do, your purpose in life. But then before we get to you actually getting to the university, you eventually met your father and found out that, oh, my father is a very wealthy man, and it was as if life was just going to begin. But then that didn't. Did you want to share your meeting him and then what transpired afterwards?
Yes, at this point, when he never came visiting me, maybe asking back to me, I grew with this deep-seated hatred for him. At some point, somebody sent me his number.
His phone number.
He wanted to talk with me. Since I never liked him, I didn't want to call him. But I was persuaded, I was encouraged by people around me. So of which I placed a call across. I called him and we talked together, invited me over to come and see him. So on getting to where he was, we fell on each other, we embraced and hugged each other. The emotion was heightened. We couldn't hold back the tears. We cried on each other's shoulder. Upon this, I discovered that my father was so rich, and I began to compare my early that's a childhood, the suffering I passed through, and also compare my father's status. So I couldn't relate. I couldn't relate. I couldn't marry them together because how could my father be so wicked to me?
He was this rich, and he never reached out to you.
He never reached out to me. I was broken. I cried. I wept for almost 3 days. So at this point,
let me just come in a little bit here.
Okay.
So you found all of this out, and of course you were not happy. A little bit of you was happy. Now you've met your father because you embraced each other. That must have felt very good. But then I want to ask, did you sit down to talk and ask him questions afterwards? All this while, where were you? Why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you check out or find out how I'm doing?
Yes, I asked him the question. I found out that we are trading blames. My mother said that the problem, he was one at fault. On getting to my dad, he also pointed the blame towards my mother. So, but the question I asked him, because I was very small, I was an infant when the problem happened. I asked my dad what was my own fault. He never answered me till today.
How is that any of my own fault?
How do I come into your problem whereby he never, consider visiting me or checking after me? So he never gave me any response to that. So on that, when I began to have a relationship with him, and now, if that's a heave of sigh and a relief that help her, has come my way anyway, has finally come,
some rest,
so that maybe my struggle will reduce, that my father will help me out. But that never came to pass, because I now found out my stepmother saw my coming to my father as a threat to her position. She felt so insecure that she began to make trouble. There was fight. Each time I visited my dad, they always fought each other. And what she listed was the condition for peace to reign was that I should stay away from my dad. So on this, I was so much devastated, in the sense that my father had nothing much to say. It seemed that he was on the weaker side. He
didn't say anything in your defense or to make you stay and
yes, he didn't say anything convincing, because for calling me, I thought that he must have made provision for me, but I found out there was no provision made for me. So he was never there for me. He never trained me in school. So why should I, be wasting my time or somebody that never had a proper plan for my life? So that was when I left him and went back to my business, because I picked a career in financial market, the business, of which I'm a professional currency strategist. I was trained in international stock market, like New York stock market, European stock market, and also emerging markets. So on this, it was around 2012, I incorporated a business in Lagos. I started offering public services, financial management, advice to investors, of which I had people, maybe many churches investing in my program, also private individuals. Some of them usually gave me their platform to talk to their members, of which my client base was on increase. So at this point, my business I was into had a prospect of taking me to international stage, of which I vowed to myself that I must be rich, whatever it takes for me to become a rich person.
You have nothing to do with poverty.
So I didn't want to be poor. I wanted to make myself happy, because since the mother wasn't there, father wasn't there, I just want to try to change the narrative of my life. I struggled so hard to change the story. So that is why I focus on my business, how to improve my life, my financial life. So that was why I invested my time, effort in this business. So that was what I was. But something happened. During 2012, my business, I had already established it. So I had a dream. I came across a friend in a dream. After exchanging greetings, he demanded for my business card, of which what I had in mind to give him was the financial service, the business I was into. But as I dipped my hand into my pocket, I brought something I brought out from my pocket, so shocked me, in the sense that what I brought was written international evangelism. I was shocked. I woke up at it.
On the card that you brought out from your pocket?
Yes, international evangelism. I woke up. I was shocked. I was asking myself, what is the meaning of this? So I couldn't relate to it. After that time, and what I noticed after that time, I began to have recurring dreams. Sometimes I usually see myself preaching the gospel, but I was not interested to be a minister or evangelist, because my focus, my target was to become a successful businessman.
Very wealthy.
So each time I had this dream of preaching. I used to downplay it because that wasn't my dream or my vision. So this thing started coming and coming over and over. But time came because I had many pastors that were my friends. Most of them I had their funds in my management. So sometimes they have this culture of going to mountain to pray. So at this point, a pastor friend of mine invited me to follow them to mountain to pray, of which I went with them. So on this mountain, I was praying with them. But I was standing, I went somewhere to meditate. So a pastor came to me. Okay. I have never met the man before. That was the first time I've seen the man on the mountain when we went to pray. So he told me that I'm too stubborn, that God will use an iron fist stand on me before I will agree to follow him, to walk with him. After saying this words, he left. I was just like kind of a seed of thought in my heart. Sometimes if I remember that encounter, I used to reflect on those words, but I couldn't find a meaning or come to any conclusion of what.
You didn't connect it to whether or not this meant that God wanted you to be a pastor, and you are very stubborn, you don't want to be a pastor.
Exactly. Because of my focus, or because of
your drive
my
to become
drive to
wealthy
become what
and
I
rich.
wanted to. I couldn't relate it, that it didn't make much meaning. So this happened around 2013. So I was also doing my business, but I had a business relation with a broker, the major broker I trade with. Okay. They are based in Switzerland, Geneva, Switzerland. Right. So the time they used to invite most of their partners around the world for a meeting, maybe, or event. Okay. The first time they extended invitation to me to come over to Geneva, I was not prepared financially. I didn't go that time, but the next time I was preparing myself to join them that subsequent event. So I was making a preparation. So getting to this point, I felt something unusual. I began to feel as an unusual sensation around my body. I noticed that this snake was crawling on my body.
Snake as in a serpent?
Yeah, snake. I was feeling the sensation. I complained to people around me that snake is crawling on my body. Some we dismiss it as a psychological problem.
Did you feel it was squeezing, or it was just moving around?
It was moving around me.
And yet you would look at yourself and you couldn't see anything. I can't see anything.
But the feeling was there. I was complaining to people. They say,
does this happen in the night or during the day?
All the time, both in the day and the night. Mostly when I sit down or when I'm just emotionless, that's when I feel it more. The thing will begin to crawl on my body. So it wasn't a long time, and I had mental breakdown. So I was taken to psychiatric hospital. So I spent some time at a psychiatric hospital.
And what did doctors say actually was wrong with you at this time? The psychiatrist, what did they say was responsible for that feeling that you were having, that sensational feeling?
The cognitive process was altered at the process. So I believe that was what they were treating me for.
And did you feel any improvement? Did you think what they were doing was worth it or working? Yes,
I had a lot of improvement. While even when I was discharged, there was improvement around me. But what happened after 2 weeks, I came back from psychiatric hospital, and I had a stroke. Part of my body was totally paralyzed. About this point, I was useless to myself because I could not solve any problem for myself. So I depend on other people. This also continued for a period of time. So I had a dream. I was in a dream. Somebody came and touched me. Somebody touched me. And an image.
Pardon me, before that dream, where was your mom in all of this? Your mother, where was she? When you were having this feeling, having to go to the hospital, did she show up? Did she come around?
Yes, she normally came around. She used to come around to stay with me for a while. Sometimes she used to bring provisions for my upkeep in that place I was staying. Sometimes when I felt loneliness, I used to send a message across, and she will stay with me for some time to keep me company. Maybe perhaps sometimes she'll stay a day or half a day. She would go
to just make sure you are okay and everything is going well.
Yeah. So that was that.
Now, share with us, at some point after all of this, you got into this, having to go to the mountaintop to pray. And you had to visit Pentecostal churches to pray.
So at this point,
what were exactly in your mind were you looking for at the time?
At that time, when you see television adverts, when miracles and, take place, how people are healed, I just believe, okay, let me go to these people, whether they can provide solution to my problem. I went to, that's virtually all the churches in Nigeria for solution, for deliverance. Those that used to do deliverance prayer. Sometimes I spent that's many days in their camp, in their churches for deliverance. There was no deliverance. And each time I went there, and whenever I come back, I used to see in a dream, something like Satan used to come. He used to manifest in my dream. He used to tell me that I was dedicated to him. That the only way out is just for me to serve him. If I serve him, he's going to bless me. I said, never, never, I cannot serve you. I'd rather die than to serve you.
Okay, but pardon me, in all of this, you went to these churches, there were prayer sessions, there were so many, of course, maybe Bible studies and all. What exactly, the pastors, those you related with, what were they saying to you? And did they in any way give you hope, that is, that this is going to get better? As you saw the miracles, when you compare what you saw on TV, in the adverts, and then what you were going through?
Most of them I met, they prayed for me. They assured me that it's going to, I say, some will tell you that this is an easy something, say, it's a simple thing. Once they pray for me, or once I do this and that, what the directions they will give me, that everything will be taken care of, that I'll be okay. But after all this, nothing happened. I never felt any relief. It was just like that. So that is why at this point I was disappointed. I felt disappointed. Even at some time I stopped going to church at all, because I felt that both God, everybody has abandoned me. I was just on my own.
Did it ever occur to you in all of this, maybe I should send word to my father, this is what I'm going through, maybe he can help me? Or for you, that aspect of life was totally closed?
My problem with my father was that whatever you tell him, get to the wife, and the wife hate me with passion. So it's just like
somehow it will not happen.
My stepmother will be celebrating everything, because once I had problem, if she get to know that I'm into such problem, she will be happy. So that is why I never considered
kept it from them.
Yeah, kept it from him for them to be in dark of what I was passing through. So that is that.
So this feeling of that sensation with the snake thing, it ended with you going to the psychiatric hospital and coming out. When you were treated, you didn't have that sensational feelings anymore, or did it still happen? I want us to...
The solution I got from psychiatric hospital was that's a cognitive process. My sanity was restored, but the snake crawling on my body persisted. It never stopped. It continued the way it was.
And all of this was a feeling, not that you saw it physically and like you in a dream, that you now saw that, oh, certainly it must be a snake. I'm just trying to assert whether or not at any point you were able to establish that, oh, in my dream I saw it was actually a snake. Or it was just a feeling that you had in your mind?
It was just feeling. I never saw it as in a physical manifestation.
Okay.
So it was just all a dream. But what I used to see in dream, as I've told you earlier, I used to see something like an appearance of Satan. Asked me that, he used to tell me that I've been dedicated to him, that I will serve him. So at one point I visited my mother. I asked my mother, when I was a child, when I was a kid, where did you take me to? Do you dedicate me to any deity or any shrine? Or perhaps any prayer house? Did you take me? She said no. That's how I came back. I was so confused.
And your grandparents, they were no longer alive at this time?
They were alive.
But you didn't ask them if they did anything, this dedication to something. Did you ask them also?
I asked them, though I didn't need to ask them, because my grandparents, they were devout Christians, Adventists.
Okay.
So I never, but even when I asked them, there was nothing. That they had nothing to do with that's kind of maybe idol or that's can be there. My grandfather used to just say a devout my grandparent. That's especially
very, very devout Seventh-day
yes,
Adventists.
they were very devoted to the faith.
Tell me, this disturbance, this unusual feeling that made you, this dream where you see that manifestation of what you regarded as Satan, who claims you were dedicated to him, you must serve me, when you serve me, you'll be free, you'll be rich. So all of this was in the dream. Does it disturb you? Does it come, are there feelings that you get during the day, or it was just at night when you slept?
It was all day, all night.
All
Because
day, all night.
sometimes I used to also I had other sensations. Sometimes when I sit down, that's physically, I'll be feeling hands scraping my hair without seeing the people.
Like a hand running over your head?
Yes, as if a hand is using razor blade to scrape my hairs. So these kind of feelings, I also having such feelings.
When people, because you were still in your business at this time.
No,
So
I've left my business when the problems that the first time I had a mental break, that was the end when I stopped the business. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this feeling when something feels like it's scraping your head and so on, does it happen when people are around or just when you are? I know you talked about when you are motionless, maybe when you are not doing anything, but did it ever happen with people around you such that they could see and maybe ask, why are you feeling uncomfortable, or why are you acting in a particular way?
Yes, people, because since many people around me, since they knew that I had gone to psychiatric hospital and came back, so some of the unusual behavior were not new to them. So, but this of a scraping head, it was not all regular. It was not all the time, but once in a while, this one used to come. Another one in the night, I don't used to sleep because demons in where I was, maybe wherever I would be sleeping, they always manifest in the night. So sometimes I used to go to church. I used to go to church and sleep in the church. Sometimes I would be crying all night in the church as the God to deliver me from my problem. So I hardly slept at home during this time. I used to run to the church. Sometimes I will go to bed in the night in the house. In the middle of the night, nobody will see me again. Maybe they will see me the following day, because I always
you find your way to the church to see
church,
whether you can get
refuge or solution, or for just because I used to tell God I was dedicated in the church. When I was born, I was dedicated to you. Why is it that the devil is claiming ownership of my life? The devil never allowed me to rest. So that is why I just trying like that to abandon myself in the hand of God. Say, this is your house. This is where I was dedicated when I was born.
Yet in the church, you still had this feeling.
In the church, it will still come and be oppressing me in the church.
This church you were attending, was it the Seventh-day Adventist church, or you were still out in the Pentecostal churches at the time?
By this time I've come back to Seventh-day Adventist church. The time I was just roaming around looking for meaning and purpose for my life. At this point, I left the Adventist church. I joined one of the Pentecostal churches. I was going there, but there's something that remarkable that happened. One of the pastor in that church I was going to came to me in a dream. I saw him in a dream. He told me that Jesus sent him to tell me to go back to his church. This happened 3 times. The 3rd time, I woke up. I was reflecting on this message that had been coming.
Go back to the church that you left from.
Yes, his church. And I said that Jesus was specific. That's a church that really belonged to Jesus Christ. That was at this point. I said, no, let me go back. That was when I went back to Ezekiel Church.
Okay.
Yes.
And yet these feelings and these experiences persisted. How much of comfort and help, support did you get from the church now as you were having that feeling? You are trying to tell God, I'm dedicated to you. The devil cannot claim ownership of me. And you were going through all of this motion of sleepless nights. How much of support did you get from church members, the church pastor, and so on?
Many people prayed for me. Many people were concerned for what I was, because then many people had already knew me as somebody that was full of life, somebody lively. But all of a sudden, everything, my situation changed. I was highly depressed. So many people, they were all concerned. They were praying for me. But as a church, I went to this church is not an Adventist church. I used to go to just a ministry. They used to have prayer conference, prayer program. So I used to visit this a ministry. One day, after the demonstration, after the service, a lady from the church called me. She told me that God revealed something to her concerning me, that I have something precious in my hand that the devil wants to destroy. So I told her a little bit of my experience, what I was passing through. She promised to help me, to back me up with prayers. She used to come in the midnight. We used to pray together. She did this for 7 days. After 7 days, she never called again. So I was worried because I was getting used to her. So after she never called again, I went back to the ministry. I met the people I used to see her with. I was asking them after her. They told me she traveled. So I thought they told me the truth. But after some time, maybe after another 1 month, I saw this lady. She was totally changed from what I just, that's it, from who
how you used to know her.
So I began to ask her. I noticed that she came out of death, from the point of death. She was what she narrated to me, and now flashback, and I realized that this demon had, attacked her, struck her, in order to stop her from helping me out with prayers. Because she was
trying to help you, she was attacked. So
at this point, I made up my mind I'll never go to anybody because of my problems, so that somebody will not pay, use his life to pay for my problems.
So you decided, with God, I would stay.
So at this point, I wanted to die. I told God to take away my life because the misery was so much.
But he did not take it. So God did not take your life, and you kept wondering what's going to become of me. But we thank God that God didn't take your life, because if he did, you wouldn't be here today sharing that story. And as we come back on the other side of this discussion, we will be looking at, you'll be sharing with us how exactly God walked you through this experience and who you are today. That'll be all on today's edition of the Damascus Encounter. When we come back on the next edition, we'll be looking at what Amaechi actually did, how he tried to get out of this problem that persisted for so long, and was begging God, please take my life. And I want to believe that you have been touched and you are praying, hopefully, as you also have been thinking of what Jesus is trying to do with your life. Maybe it's all beginning to make some sense and meaning. Don't miss the next edition of the Damascus Encounter. We'll be back and we'll be sharing another side of all of this encounter. Until then, keep watching Hope Channel and looking out for your Damascus Encounter. Bye-bye.